time for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
We did not engage in conflict that was out of line with our mission.
Is it disloyalty? Is it sedition? Is it treason to oppose the hands of tyranny? Never!
I will never send troops anywhere on a mission of that kind without telling them that if somebody shoots at them, they can darn well shoot back.
I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty! Oh, give me death!
A dark cloud is finally lifting across the world as U.S. military intelligence and their global partners are destroying the deep state criminal power structure that has ruled over our planet for hundreds of years.
We are free with the God-given right, and we shall not yield that right to any power on earth.
Hi, I'm Scott McKay. The world is at, and I am your host on The Tipping Point on Revolution Radio, where every Monday from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, we bring you the latest in this ensuing takedown of this global criminal empire.
That's an image of strength.
You'll get the raw, hard truth here on The Tipping Point. So come join us Mondays, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern in Studio B at revolution.radio.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it. Right, you tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio.
Here we go, hour one. And greetings, Earth Explorers. Welcome to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, coming to you live from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. This is where the past meets the future, and here the results are always positive. We might go a little past your imagination. Have no fear, you will be safely traveling with us. We are streaming to you live on audio through Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio network in America, possibly in the world. We're also streaming to you live on video on Rockfin and Rumble and Facebook and Twitch and DLive and Twitter and Foxhole and YouTube. So if you would like any one of those venues, you can be streaming to us or streaming with us right now live for free. And of course, after the program, you can share the link with your friends, any of those platforms, and they can listen for free as well. So we have a few stories tonight, and I have a movie review for Top Gun, which if you haven't seen it yet, I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but I'm probably going to motivate you. And I want to thank everybody in the chat room. Old Dog, Cherokee Drifter, good to see you back, sir. Nice. Let's see, Bob Connor. I'm sporting his hat right now, which is a Freedom Trucker's hat. He's a great graphic artist. And let's see. Is that Itzot 1984? Okay. Darn spell check. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I got that Defense News story too with the rocket launcher system heading to Ukraine. I have a little bit of news on that too, so don't worry too badly about that. Carib 67's out there. Let's see, Jennifer. Good to see you out there. Errol, Trucker Will, Blue Water. So let's get started. We have a bunch of stories. I also want to welcome my friends on Foxhole. I am monitoring that chat as well. Keep True is already live in there. So we will continue. I'll turn the gold pills on in just a little bit. Just hang loose there. And let's see, make sure Rockfin is up and going. Yes, Rockfin is good. Okay. You know the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. I'm sure you've been watching it if you're unemployed. If you're employed, you're probably not watching it. But the thing that interests me about defamation trials and divorce trials like this is when narcissists are involved, because we have talked a few times on this program about narcissism and how to avoid it, how to recognize it, how to protect yourself against it, because it's really, a source of a mental anguish for men and for women. It took me a long time to even discover that women could be narcissists, but they can. Every once in a while, a true narcissist loses a battle. Usually they don't lose. They usually win. Even when they lose, they win because in their mind, it's the outcome that they wanted all along, or nobody understood what was really right and everybody's crazy except for them. But Amber Heard reacted to the jury ruling in favor of Johnny Depp in his defamation trial against her. And she said, "I seem to have lost a right I thought I had as an American to speak freely and openly." And this is classic narcissism, where you get somebody that's really woke, that is really trying to attack somebody because of the way the person is being treated sexually or has been classified sexually. And they retaliate and, of course, gaslight everybody around them into doubting their own masculinity. And then they speak, when they lose, they speak of, I guess I thought I had, free speech. They jump back to the Bill of Rights and try to wrap themselves in it to see if they can, stay safe. The disappointment I feel today is beyond words. I'm heartbroken that the mountain of evidence still was not enough to stand up to the disproportionate power, influence, and sway of my ex-husband. That's what she said in her statement. Yeah. I'm even more disappointed with what his verdict means for other women. It is a setback. It sets back the clock to a time when a woman who spoke up and spoke out could be publicly shamed and humiliated. It sets back the idea that violence against women is to be taken seriously. Yeah. Anyway, the jury concluded that the Aquaman star, made false statements about Johnny Depp with defamatory implication, and that the Pirates of the Caribbean star has proven by clear and convincing evidence that Heard acted with actual malice. So that was it. Now, I have a good friend who is a supermodel in her own right and a good actress and a great musician who would play the part of this female role in Aquaman way better. And we've been trying to get her an audition for a while, but see, she's not jabbed, so it's pretty hard to get an audition in Hollywood if you haven't been jabbed. But the jury concluded that, that she was a bitch. And that's pretty much what it came down to. So the jury awarded Johnny Depp $10 million in compensatory damages and $5 million in punitive damages. That means it hurt him $10 million worth because it hurt him at the box office. People were looking down on him and talking behind his back, and he maybe lost some deals that he could prove that he lost because of this kind of notoriety. And another $5 million in punitive, which means punishment. Thou shalt never do this again, money. I believe Johnny's attorneys succeeded in getting the jury to overlook the key issue of freedom of speech and ignore evidence that was so conclusive that we won in the UK. Heard said, "I'm sad I lost the case, but I'm sadder still that I seem to have lost a right," blah, blah, blah. I already read that to you. The verdict brings to an end, and I don't even know why we don't do this with every trial, which we should. We should have, the trial channel. We have celebrity judges that have programs, right? And they have channels, and I'm told people actually watch those channels. I don't know. It's kind of like, I don't have cable. I haven't had cable in a long, long time. But when I did, the shows that I wanted, the things that I wanted to watch were probably less than a dozen channels. I wanted, of course, the Speed Channel and, all the really good channels, right? But what came with the package were like shopping channels and church channels. Yeah, 24 hours a day of clips of a handful of televangelists and musicians, begging for money. And, put your hand on the screen, all that stuff. But, I don't know if people watched it or not. I know the cable companies and even the satellite companies can tell if they have, let's say they have 10 million households wired up. They could tell at any given moment what channel those 10 million households are looking at. In the old days, it used to be the Nielsen ratings. There were families that were selected to be Nielsen families, and they had a box in their house. And whatever, show they watched, if it was Johnny Carson or if it was Batman or whatever they watched, it was a sampling. It was a sampler, and it went back to the networks, and it told the networks, we have a 7.5 share. We have an 11.5 share of this show or that show. And they could tell based on this sampling. But not every family was a Nielsen family. Now, all that's changed. All that changed. That remote box you have in your house or that satellite setup that you have, every single solitary screen is monitored. Even if you're recording the show while watching the game, that counts. And why would they do that? Well, they do it because the people that put on the show, people that have that channel, that's how they get paid. That's how they get paid. So if you watch Netflix, for instance, and everybody's going to watch Stranger Things when it starts up, or they're going to watch The Boys, season 3. I'm going to be there opening night every Friday, you bet. They know that millions of people are watching that program. And they know that these people are paying dollars every month, and they do see ads on Netflix every now and then. And that's exposure. So that production brings viewers to Netflix as opposed to Amazon or Hulu or Disney, because there's a lot of competition for that viewing dollar now. So this ability to draw people to a production is big money. Tom Cruise, they used to call it cruise control, he has the box office draw. $146 million Top Gun drew Friday. That's huge, and it was a long weekend. And, you know, this is not an ordinary launch of a movie. This movie was produced 3 years ago. It was ready to go 3 years ago. But because of the pandemic, you know, people were not in the theaters. There was nobody to buy tickets, nobody to buy popcorn, nobody to send that money back to the studio. So they shelved it. They shot it. They produced it. They scored it. It was done in the can. They shelved it. And they left it secret, which means no leaks, not even, you know, extended trailers. Before the movie starts, right after the, you know, they say, well, you know, Scorpio Films, or, you know, how they always talk about the different film companies that are collaborating to put the production on for you. Right after that, Tom Cruise comes on. No makeup, no contact lenses or anything. And he looks straight into the camera. And something I've never seen before, ever. And I don't know if we'll ever see it again. Maybe, because it was so successful. But he looks right at the camera, right at the people sitting in those theater seats. And he thanks them. Thank you for coming out and sitting in a theater and watching a movie. Thank you for putting clothes on and shoes and driving to the theater and buying popcorn and a Coke and not waiting for this to come out on Netflix or some streaming service. Thank you for coming to the theater and buying a ticket. I thought that was great. It was great. And it wasn't, you know, big fanfare or anything. He was looking straight at the camera, straight at us. And it was heartfelt. It was sincere. And I thought it added value. So I stepped aside a little bit. The reason when these kinds of cases go to trial, they're so important, is because that face, that voice, that movie star, and some of them are actors, yes. I think Johnny Depp can act. He has played characters, Edward Scissorhands, and, you know, he's done voices in cartoons like Rango, and he's always been good, always been active, always been a hard worker, and he's kind of a perfectionist when he does what he does, and he has talent, and he goes above and beyond. He dresses up, you know, as Captain Jack Sparrow, and he goes and visits kids in hospitals, and he is a genuine person, as genuine as an actor can be, right? Which is, by definition, disingenuous, because you're being somebody that you're not, convincingly on the screen and getting people to pay for it. But that's how important that reputation is, and actors that understand this protect that reputation. They don't get, you know, all Kevin Spacey, where they think that they're so talented they can do whatever they want to whomever they want. They'll eventually get caught and get thrown in jail or lose their acting careers. I mean, one of the greatest actors of all time, Tom Hanks. Look what happened to him. Look what happened to him. That wasn't defamation. That was revelation. That was revelation of everything that he's been involved in off camera. People had an allergic reaction to that. I don't think that Tom Hanks could act in a movie again. I don't think people would go see it. Right? So that's why these kinds of lawsuits are so important, because when somebody gets sued for libel, you have to show that you have lost something because of this libel, because of the slander, because of the defamation. that was pretty easy to do because Johnny Depp has told his bankroll is his popularity. His bankroll is his reputation, off and on camera. And Heard went after that. So, yes, the case was about libel, and whether it's, Carol Burnett or whether it's Johnny Depp, most of the testimony focused on whether Heard had been physically and sexually abused, as she claimed. I don't know that has anything to do with anything except your personal relationship with that person. But they said they had more than a dozen alleged assaults, including a fight in Australia where Depp was shooting Pirates of the Caribbean sequel, in which Depp lost the tip of his middle finger, and Heard said, well, I'm not going to mention that on the radio because I don't even understand that. But anyway, sexual assault in a way that probably belongs on OnlyFans page, I suppose. But, couples do that, especially when there are a lot of chips on the table. And in this case, there appears to have been. And anytime there's a lot of chips on the table and there's a narcissist in the room, somebody's going to lose the end of a finger. That's the rules, the way it happens. So let me tell you a little bit about Top Gun. Because he's still a bona fide movie star. Okay, Depp is an actor, but, if you watched Far and Away, that I think he acted. He played an Irish immigrant and had an Irish accent and, brought that famous, Tom Cruise passion and temper to the screen. It was impressive. It was impressive. And there was a lot of horseback riding. And another thing Cruise is famous for is doing his own stunts. His facial expressions when he goes into a role are so convincing on camera, and they work to get those angles. They work to see his face while that's happening. And that's his stock and trade. And he works hard to do it. So he's a bona fide movie star. And he makes movies normal people want to see. I mean, what is a normal person anymore? But I mean, people that go to the movies are discriminating, to be sure. We're not easily entertained anymore like we used to be. But he's going to put $200 million in his pocket for Top Gun Maverick. And this would not only be an all-time record, but it will also shatter the previous record, which was Bruce Willis a quarter century ago. In 1999, Willis negotiated a $14 million acting fee, 17% of the worldwide gross, not the net, and ended up with $120 million after The Sixth Sense became a global phenomenon. Who would have known? Who would have known? But it was such a surprise ending, really such a surprise ending. Anyway, Cruise had twice run away with $100 million. Once in 2000 for Mission Impossible, which I watched all those movies. They were excellent. I mean, just excellent. And two again in 2005 for War of the Worlds, and I thought that was well done. And I actually thought he did a really good job in the movie about Mena, Arkansas, as well. He was acting, and he did a fine job. So for Top Gun Maverick, Cruise was paid an upfront acting fee of $13 million. And he's going to receive 20% of the gross, not the net, worldwide box office. So the sequel to the iconic 1986 blockbuster. I know it's like you're going, wait a minute, 86? That's 36 years ago? Come on. Oof. Anyway, it's already grossed $300 million. So Cruise has earned $73 million. That's pretty good. And by the way, he does fly. He flies the P-51 Mustang. He flies his own jet called Patriot. Something to keep in mind is that this $300 million was earned in just 4 days. And I have to tell you, I've been to the theater half a dozen times since the pandemic. I'm not impressed. AMC theaters are run down. The seats are smelly. The popcorn's expensive and kind of tasteless. The sound is amazing. The screen is always good. But, I used to go to the movies 6-7 times a month. I love the movies. I love the work that goes into them. I love the technology that goes into them. I love the writing and the acting and the level of perfection that you have to reach to get something that will entertain you in the seat. You have no idea what's involved. Those of us that have been writing scripts and books and we've directed plays and whatever, you really appreciate a good actor. You appreciate somebody who can bring art to the screen. It's much harder than you think. It's not just a matter of getting on screen and looking beautiful. There are a lot of beautiful dumbasses on the screen. So, what's going on? Why is this happening? Why is a movie that's not woke, that doesn't have any queer actors or, you know what I'm talking about. I don't even want to go into it. But, during his public relations troubles more than 15 years ago, a lot of people never stopped believing in Tom Cruise because he is so dedicated to his art. And through it all, every single time, every single movie, he has always delivered, always the best. And that's what a movie star does. That is how you do a great job. Everything you do on the screen is forever. It lasts forever, long after you are gone. The audience has to trust your choices and trust that you will never let them down. Unlike most modern actors, Cruise gets this. He understands it. Others that get it are older and have paid a much bigger price without possibly even as big a reward. Clint Eastwood, John Wayne, Jimmy Stewart, Joan Crawford, Denzel Washington, who isn't really an actor. He's a movie star. Denzel Washington always plays Denzel Washington. Same with Clint Eastwood. I mean, you've got Cary Grant, Betty Davis. Those are old ones, but, Robin Williams, they never, ever disappointed. And something else you can never do, ever, is you can't attack your audience. You can't, be a Will Smith and get up there and talk bad about your audience. Because woke is broke. I hate to tell you that. Woke is broke. And everything woke is dumb as crap. All this, let's call it woke tartary, is slaughtering, major careers and major companies. Disney, and the list goes on and on and on. We're talking billions of dollars of stock worth. And if I was a shareholder, which I'm not, but if I was, I would be suing that CEO for the decisions that they've made. Woke movies, they lecture us. They talk down to us. They make us believe or force their beliefs on us. Taking heroes that we have always loved, Batman or Superman or, I don't know, Spider-Man, whatever you want to go with in the Marvel universe, and making that gay play in the movie. It insults us. They break the storytelling spell when they insert this garbage in the movie. And it's mostly, about sexuality and gender and inclusiveness. If I hear that word again, I think I'm just going to have to throw up. The point is, Tom Cruise delivers. And he's enjoying the biggest hit of his 40-year career and potentially the biggest payday in Hollywood history. And you got to ask the question, is Hollywood going to stand up and pay attention to this? Are they going to say, oh, this is the kind of movie that can, save a studio? Yeah, if you have a little recording studio, which they don't really have like that much anymore, everybody can do a recording studio in their basement with the technology we have today. But, there was a day when you had to go get a recording contract and you had to go in and, had to be well rehearsed and sit in front of the mic. And it was, $35 an hour or $135 an hour to lay down tracks. And then the mixing engineer would mix it all together and divide it up and stereograph it and, Dolby mix it, and it would come out great. And they would bring in extra things like strings and chorus and, stuff like that, extra drumming and doll it up and get it ready for vinyl or get it ready for a CD. And, a studio's claim was not their expert mixing. Screw that. It wasn't their quiet, free recording. Who cares anything about that? It wasn't about the snacks. It wasn't about the address. It wasn't about the label at all. It was about the talent. It was about, is Prince going to walk in my door today? Is Elvis Presley going to walk in my door today? It was the talent that made the studio famous. It was the talent that made the studio the money, because they're the ones that sold the albums. And then what would happen is the next artist, the next Led Zeppelin, the next, Cars, the next Talking Heads, who are playing bars and stuff for $100 a show per person, they walk in because of the gold and the platinum that has walked out of that studio, has come out of that studio. That's what makes it great. That's what makes studios great. MGM and Fox and, Warner Brothers, that's what makes them great. Look what Pixar did. Pixar what? Pixar sounds like picking your nose. But look what they did. Look at the work they did. That's what we're talking about here. And Tom Cruise is what brings that horsepower to a studio. So do you think they're going to look at him, oh, you toxically masculine, heterosexual son of a bitch, get out of my studio? No way. They're going to say, right this way, Mr. Cruise. Would you like to read my script, Mr. Cruise? Would you like to shoot my movie, Mr. Cruise? That's how we win this woke tartary. Now, hopefully, Cruise will continue to deliver. He is rich enough to do whatever he wants, that's for sure. And I don't think he's a drug addict. He's not an alcoholic. He is focused upon things that resonate with the excellence and the dream that he tries to put forward. And I think there are other actors and actresses like that. We don't even know their names yet. But like Paula Asteria, I've had her on this program a couple times. I've been on hers. She looks incredible on film. The camera isn't even a camera until it films her. She's that natural for the film, for the screen. And just has to get a chance to do it. And she's not going to get jabbed. So buck up, studios, and get a brain. All right, let's talk about something else. We burned a half hour on that. Thanks for hanging in there, chat room. I like the movies, and I used to do a lot of movie reviews, back in 2017, 18, 19. I went to a lot of movies. I had a movie pass. I'm probably the reason why they got rid of the movie pass, because I abused it. I went to probably 18 movies a month off that thing. I loved it. I liked it. I learned a lot about film and learned a lot about movies by watching them, by paying, if you get the, I use Adobe Premiere Pro, which is the software all the big studios use, and it's not easy to use, but it is very powerful. And I've made some short films and some videos and things like that, and so I know what's involved. And I've sat, side by side with experienced editors, and they are pretty amazed, when somebody comes along that pours that much energy into learning it and getting good at it. And so when I see something happen on screen, or I watch how a line is delivered on the camera and the line continues with another camera angle, And one of the things that I do now, it probably drives people crazy, is you count camera time. You know, in the old days, they would set a couple cameras in the room and they would just run, you know, and John Wayne would say his lines, or Cary Grant would say his lines, or Clark Gable would say his lines, and they would change lenses and lighting. And once they got it, you know, where it was supposed to be, then it was all about delivery. It was all about how do you look on camera. It doesn't work that way anymore. If I alert you to this, you're going to watch for it next time. And as soon as the camera goes live, and this can happen even during the credits or like an intro, before there are any words spoken, somebody's driving across town, or somebody's walking through an office building, or somebody's hiking through a forest, before even the first word is spoken. But if the camera's rolling and someone's on it and someone's doing something, or they're filming something like airplane landing or a car driving up or a submarine or whatever, count the camera time. This will blow your mind how much work this takes. Most of the shots will not be any longer than 2 seconds, 2 to 3 seconds, some of them half a second. It's incredible how much action will be going on, and there'll be a drone overhead, a one inside the vehicle looking in the rearview mirror at the driver's eyes, one looking through the windshield, one on the side of the road as the car goes past. And these are 2 seconds, 1.5 seconds, 1 second. Just start a timer. Watch it. When the camera flashes on the person's face, go 1, 2, bam. That camera will be on someone else's face, or the back of his head, or the side shot. And a lot of times they use what's called a fluid camera. A fluid camera is like, you know, when you're holding up your phone and you're doing a selfie video and you turn like this, you know, and the background is moving behind you, but your face is in front of the phone all the time. That's fluid camera number one. The other fluid camera is where you are facing one direction and the camera goes completely around you, facing you. One of the TV shows that does this a lot, and it's almost exclusive to this program, how much they do it, is L.A. Law. You ever watch that? Or one of the legal shows, they'll have the fluid camera. And now the interesting thing is they'll be on a street, on a street downtown, glass on the building side and cars on the curb side, right? The camera will go completely around them and you don't see the reflection of the camera in the window. You don't see the cameraman in the window as he goes on the curb side of the actor. That takes talent. That takes skill. That videographer really knows what he's doing. He knows how to angle the camera just right. And so when he walks past them and the lens is straight at that glass, his body is in the way of that camera and you can't see it until he gets past it. And then the camera's out of that reflection. It's incredible. A lot of fine work. And the sound, getting a good sound guy to get that sound. They have a lavalier mic on the person and they have a boom mic, both recording at the same time. And they'll mix them together to get that good sound. Didn't you ever wonder, like when you were watching, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, or you were watching the TV version of it, and they're galloping along on the horses full blast, and yet you can hear them talking back and forth between one another? You remember, what was the movie, Days of Thunder? Remember Days of Thunder when Colt Trickle was in the car, and he's driving supposedly at 200 miles an hour, but he's talking to the crew chief? See, all that's overdubbed. That he's not actually talking in the car. He's talking in an overdub booth, watching the movie with you and saying his lines. That's how they get the good sound. It's a lot of work. So that's how it's done. Yeah, and a lot of deception too, Susan. That's exactly right. That's the whole idea with film, is to deceive you. To put you in a battle in the desert, or in a room where some torture's going on, or in some, boardroom with the accountant where him and Anna Kendrick, I'm a big Anna Kendrick fan, by the way, they're, writing with erasable markers on glass, trying to find where the money's leaking out. You're in the room with them. You're feeling that. That's what it's all about. Yeah. Oh, suspension of disbelief, which we would call convincing someone. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the FBI. Of course, a juror in the trial of former Hillary Clinton campaign lawyer Michael Sussman told the media, after, of course, he was unanimously acquitted yesterday, said she did not think the case should have been prosecuted because lying to the FBI was not a big deal. Everybody lies to the FBI. It's just not a big deal. Why would you take a prominent, well-respected, well-paid attorney like Mr. Sussman and haul him down into court for lying to the FBI? Don't you know everybody lies to the FBI? It's no big deal. Well, the case was the most high-profile prosecution undertaken by Special Counsel John Durham, who we've been waiting patiently for. He was investigating the origins of the Russia collusion conspiracy theory. Trial saw testimony that tied Hillary Clinton directly to the hoax. That's what we got from Robbie Mook. But Sussman was widely considered by legal observers to have been proven guilty. He was proven guilty. The evidence showed it. It wasn't just circumstantial. That guy lied. He openly deceived the FBI. And given the testimony of FBI agents and a text message that suggested he claimed to be acting as a concerned citizen rather than a Clinton campaign lawyer, was a lie. It was a lie. You saw it. I saw it. Everybody knew it. But were you surprised at all at this verdict, given where the trial was held? In Swampland, in downtown Swampland, with a swamp judge and a swamp jury. No, nobody was surprised. So why? What was the freaking point, Mr. Durham? Why didn't you file for a change of venue? Why didn't you have the trial in Nashville or Indiana or Charlotte? Why did you do it in Swamp Central? I have an answer. Anyway, former White House National Security official Kash Patel, you know who he is, right? Very, very sharp guy, very sharp guy. He must have picked it up on this program, but he's also very sharp in his own right. He talked about a thing called jury nullification. Now, jury nullification is something a prosecutor or prosecuting attorney, which Kash Patel was, would know about. It's sort of like cognitive dissonance. No matter what the judge says, no matter what the law says, no matter what instructions they have, no matter what the evidence is, the jury simply decided not to convict. And you knew it was going to happen, right? Kash knew it was going to happen. He mentioned that this might be a case of jury nullification. So the jurors' attitude hinted at nullification, and it contrasted sharply with the approach taken by a federal judge in the same D.C. jurisdiction, the same crime, except it was former Trump aide Michael Flynn, right? General Flynn. He was charged with lying to the FBI. And Judge Emmett Sullivan would not let the case go, even when they wanted to drop the charges. He wouldn't do it. When they wanted to withdraw, the prosecution said, "Judge, we don't have a case. We don't have a case." Sullivan wouldn't let it go. So that's why this is Swamp Central. So ultimately, President Trump had to pardon General Flynn, to extricate him from what observers considered a wrongful prosecution. So, what I'm about to share with you, I sent out as a thread on my social media. Of course, I have a very small social media presence. Didn't used to, but somebody in certain organizations is paid very well to keep Brooks Agnew suppressed. This thread has been removed from some of the social media where I posted it. I posted it as a 6-part thread, hoping that maybe some of it would survive. Most of it was completely wiped out as though it never even existed. So let me share it with you, and then if you want me to, I will post it again, and you can be alerted to it, and then you can share it, and it'll go viral. So this is basically what happened and the reason why the Sussman trial was done. Because the Sussman trial was based upon the Sussman indictment. And the Sussman indictment was not small. It was voluminous. And it had numerous players in it. And they were code-named, like Executive 1 and Tech Executive 1. And we didn't know who those people were, but Durham did. And as the case went forward, what was introduced were not eyewitnesses. No. Not just eyewitnesses. It was evidence. Hard evidence. Tweets and text messages and emails and fake DNS data, digital name server data. Yes, evidence was introduced into court, into the United States against Sussman. And guess what that means? That's like laundering money. It becomes clean. It's able to be used. So, if Sussman lied to the FBI and they don't want to prosecute it, what does it really do? What it really does is it implicates the FBI. Exactly right. You got it. Exactly right. That's why Durham brought the case. He knew they weren't going to convict Sussman. Not in Washington, D.C. Not going to happen. Not in Maryland. But the evidence would implicate James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Rodney Jaffe. Oh, yeah. And the FBI. Here's my thread. America cannot exist another day as a free republic while harboring organizations like the FBI. Founded in 1935 by FDR in a bloody cauldron of corruption, it was chartered with the purpose of protecting the interests of the Democrat Party. And it has been doing that ever since. The FBI must be disbanded before it is too late. Each division of the FBI must be scattered to different states with more manageable budgets. If Congress can control the money, they can limit the evil that is the FBI. Far more money is spent on domestic terrorists and school board meetings than is spent stopping school shootings or trafficking of underage children. Those are the facts. Human traffickers, drug dealers, money laundering operations, gun runners, and an extensive list of dark money NGOs are tasked with obstructing justice from being served on the U.S. government. Each FBI agent, and there are hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of them, each FBI agent manages kidnappers, hitmen, child porn creators and peddlers, and cyber terrorists who entrap and blackmail Americans at all levels. Epstein Island and the Playboy Mansion were FBI funded and operated for the purpose of controlling enemies to the Democrat Party. Fact. None of the people who raped and molested children on that island has been brought to justice. Not one, and they never will. This filth is the power of the FBI. Hunter Biden's laptop disappeared. Huma Abedin's laptop disappeared. Debbie Wasserman Schultz's laptop disappeared. The FBI is an evil weapon in the hands of evil people inside the American government. Judges, witnesses, and even presidents have been assassinated to protect the most corrupt and ruthless criminal operation in global history. They even attempted to assassinate half our Congress, you recall, when they tried to derail a train carrying almost all the Republican congressmen, and many of them had their wives with them, and many of them were also in the same baseball dugout as Congressman Scalise. Yeah, they almost got taken out by a Bernie Sanders follower. You remember that? And then they're on the train. And they're commenting to one another as the train gets hit and goes screeching to a halt. Thank God it didn't derail. One more wheel off the tracks, and we'd have lost half of Congress. Yeah. They still evade arrest. The point is, Earth Explorers, war is justice denied. And right now we are in the justice cycle. If we do not bring these people inside the American government to justice now, the world may be plunged into a war so violent it could erase history, perhaps even the human race. Yesterday, the D.C. jury, stacked with pro-Hillary Clinton jurors, acquitted former Clinton campaign attorney Michael Sussman, proving beyond any shadow of a doubt that the FBI is not ours. It belongs to the swamp. And it is time for it to go. 2 weeks ago, prosecutor Britton Shaw began opening statements in the United States versus Sussman, and he stated the obvious. I'm going to share that with you. This is what he said. Some people have been very strong feelings about politics and about Russia, and many people have strong feelings about Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. But we are not here because these allegations involve either of them. Nor are we here because the defendant's client was the Clinton campaign. Rather, we are here because the FBI is our institution and should not be used as a political tool for anybody. Not Republicans, not Democrats, not anybody. And that's exactly what was proven. They heard over 20 witnesses. All but a few testified for the prosecution. The defense didn't have anybody. The jury spent a couple of hours on Friday deliberating before the long Memorial Day weekend. Tuesday morning, the 12 jurors returned to the D.C. federal courthouse to continue deliberations. But after requesting to see a copy of Sussman's taxi receipt and some of the white papers Sussman peddled to Baker, they delivered their verdict. Not guilty. Doesn't matter to them. It doesn't matter to them. Consider Baker, to whom Sussman was charged with lying. The former FBI general counsel testified he was 100% confident Sussman said during their September 19, 2016 meeting that he was not representing a client. Baker also told the jury he likely wouldn't have taken the meeting if he knew Sussman represented the Clinton campaign. Eye hauler, bullshit. And yet Baker blamed himself for throwing Sussman into a maelstrom and expressed outrage at how the congressman investigating the investigation into Trump and his campaign behaved when they questioned Baker about his meeting with Sussman. Baker displayed not even a sliver of the same distress over his friend lying to him. On the contrary, when asked why he had just discovered the text message Sussman sent him the night before the meeting in which Sussman wrote, quote, "I'm coming on my own, not on behalf of any client or company. Want to help the Bureau." Baker told prosecutors, "I'm not out to get Michael. This is not my investigation. This is your investigation. If you ask me a question, I'll answer it. You ask me to look for something, I go look for it." And while Baker may no longer work for the FBI, he did at the time. Sussman fed him the Alpha Bank hoax, the folly, the one that was made up by Rodney Joffe. It didn't exist. That DNS didn't exist. That's like somebody writing an email from your email address to somebody, and you never sent it. That's what Rodney Joffe did. He created the link between Trump and Alpha Bank, and it didn't exist. Joffe fabricated it. Joffe needs to spend the rest of his life in prison. And so do all the FBI agents that were involved in making that happen. All right, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I'll finish up this because there are a few things you need to understand. Don't think this Durham thing is over yet. This is just getting the evidence into the record. All these people that are mentioned, the tech executives, Hillary Clinton, the others, it's just beginning. This thing is going to go RICO. It's going to go RICO, and then things are going to get very interesting. No jury involved then. It's just arrests, and that's when it's really going to start getting interesting. Yes, happy Wednesday. I can't believe it. You know, when they were saying today, happy hump day, I said, wow, one day at work, and all of a sudden, boom, it's hump day. That's really great. But, you know, these four-day weeks, they're just as long to me as the 5-day weeks. Aren't they to you? Really? Yeah, the weather's really great here. Yeah. Yes, comfortably numb too. That's correct. It is RICO. This is organized crime. Now, the real question is, who has the authority? Where is the DOJ for the DOJ? Where is the investigative body that can take on the FBI? That's got to be the military. That's the only place we have. The only place we have to deal with enemies at this level. We don't have a court. There's no judge. There's no Elliot Ness. There's only the military. And now we're into very distressing constitutional areas where the military has to go after traitors. It's something that I guess always needed to be done. We'll talk about it when we get back from the break. Don't go away.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Are you interested in the paranormal, murder mystery, real natural law? Do you enjoy interviews with amazing guests? Then join Crypt Rick every Monday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Revolution Radio. Studio A, freedomslips.com. Crypt Rick's Thinking. Welcome to the Crypt.
Join me at Revolution Radio, Studio B, at 11 a.m. on Saturday for Free Association, when we take a look at philosophy, spirituality, psychology, social issues, and geopolitics. It's every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern on Studio B at freedomslips.com.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
Galactic Interstellar Council on Revolution Radio Studio A, Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Join us as we traverse the starseed paradigm, as expressed in the time-space continuum that we know as the divine expression of love and light. Integrating this conscious unity into the galactic paradigm. So welcome all, both terrestrial beings and galactic beings as one. So be it. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at higher risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps. All right, thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
All right. So we have an hour left, and I have a lot to cover here because I have some action that we need to participate in on a local level. So we got the verdict, but as I said, that is not the reason that this case was brought in the first place, and I think the mission was accomplished. because the prosecutors had ample other evidence that established the materiality of Sussman's misrepresentation to Baker. But the jurors didn't care, all right? They just nullified it. They didn't care. But that's not the point. The point is the proof is in the record now that the FBI is no longer ours. It came before the jury verdict, actually months earlier, when a special counsel, John Durham, revealed in a discovery update that the Department of Justice's Office of Inspector General withheld evidence from Durham's team. That is part of the crime. And the Department of Justice's Office of Inspector General their job is to make sure that these things don't go off the rails. Their job is to be independent, okay? Including when it comes to misconduct by FBI agents. In preparing for the Sussman trial, the special counsel's office met with the OIG in October of 2021 to discuss discoverable materials that may be in the OIG's possession. Even though the OIG possessed 2 of Baker's FBI cell phones, prosecutors were not told of the phone's existence by the OIG. Rather, the special counsel only learned of the 2 cell phones January 6, 2022, when another FBI employee mentioned them. The same discovery update that revealed that the OIG had failed to mention Baker's cell phones also noted that the OIG had falsely told Durham's team that a written forensic report was the only information it possessed concerning a meeting between Sussman and the OIG. That was also a lie. The meeting had occurred in early 2017 when Sussman, on behalf of an unnamed client, now known to be Rodney Joffe, went to the Inspector General with a report that his client had observed that a specific OIG employee computer was seen publicly in internet traffic and was connecting to a virtual private network in a foreign country. The OIG provided the special counsel with the forensic report, but in doing so also represented to prosecutors that it had no other file or documentation relating to the cyber matter. But after Sussman's defense team informed Durham that Sussman had personally met with the IG, the Inspector General, the special counsel's office circled back, and amazingly, the OIG discovered additional documentation related to Sussman's meeting with the IG. That the OIG, the entity charged with investigating FBI's misconduct, these are the guys that keep their feet to the fire. They make sure they follow all of the proper procedures, withheld not 1, but 2 pieces of evidence from the special counsel's office until they were cornered about it. It just crushes any faith that we have in the country. Any faith that the FBI is the premier law enforcement agency in the world. It isn't. It's corrupt, and it needs to be disbanded. And there's just no trust left in it. I don't think it can be recovered. Forget about Lisa Page and Peter Strzok and Bruce Orr and Nellie Orr. Forget about all that. That's just baby stuff compared to what this is. This is a concerted effort at fraud, at obstruction of justice. And the Crossfire Hurricane members, right? We got 4 court surveillance orders, the FISA court, that were based on fraud. Then they illegally surveilled Carter Page, who was a former CIA operative. After fired FBI Director James Comey leaked to the press, he sent it to a friend who then leaked it to the media, so no one could get in trouble doing it, to try to get a special counsel in place, which they did. Mueller and that whole charade. The special counsel's prosecution of Sussman offered an opportunity for the country to see for themselves a small acknowledgement that the politicization of the FBI would not be tolerated. Instead, Americans witnessed confirmation by former FBI agency, OIG, and the D.C. jury that the FBI is theirs. It belongs to them. It doesn't belong to America. It doesn't belong to Americans. It belongs to the Democrat Party. So what do? We lose a case like this. That could be months before any of this is brought back to the court. Who knows what's going to happen with Rodney Joffe and Hillary Clinton and Susan Rice and Samantha Power and John Brennan and all these other players that were involved in this to their eyeballs. We don't know. But the war, when we fight political war like this, on this kind of level, this much money is spent, and news actors are facing their teleprompters, reading whatever it is the global syndicate has told them to read, much like they write all of Virtual Joe's speeches and his statements. He's not president. It's some think tank in Brussels that's president. The war is about a narrative. The war is about public opinion. Why? Well, who cares about public opinion? Well, look, there's 330-something million of us here, and a fair amount of us are armed, and we're not going to give up our arms. Even if you took every man, woman, and child in this country and took one gun from each of them, that would still leave about 65 million weapons out there, which is bigger than the biggest army by a big factor, by maybe 10 times as much. We outnumber any army, all the armies in the world. We outnumber all of them. You take all the Chinese, all the Russians, all the Europeans, and march them from the East Coast to the West Coast, they wouldn't make it to the Appalachian Mountains because the American people outnumber all of them. And we're all trained. We all know what we're doing, and we're not giving up 1 inch of ground. Not that way. Not that way. The federal government has taken, 700 million acres from us that they control? They won't let us log it. They won't let us mine it. They won't let us drill oil on it. They won't let us farm it. It's true. It's true. So what do? Well, we're winning the narrative. We're winning this idea war. And even if we thought it was 50-50, which it wasn't, even if we thought it was 50-50 at the time that Trump willingly left the White House, he didn't concede, but he did leave the White House. It isn't that way now. It isn't 50-50 now. It's about 70-30. About 70% of the country believes we're going in the wrong direction. Something is wrong. 70% of the people in this country believe something messed up. We need to fix this before it's too late. Only 30%, and I don't even know who the 30% could be. I really don't. Homeless people, maybe. I don't know how they could think their life is better now than it was 2 years ago. But, that's what it comes down to. Somebody wrote me the other day and said, well, we need a revolution. And I said, yes, that's a great idea. But I have to point out, because this is where the past meets the future, revolutions are never finished by the people who start them. They're not. There are forces that sit back and wait for things like revolutions, and they wait for shit to get torn up and broken and for people to get killed and banks to get robbed and bridges to get blown up and refineries to be shut down and nuclear power plants to be shut down so that they can move in and, not only buy a bunch of real estate for cheap, but they can move in and take over in the weakness. In the fog of war, they can move in very organized and very mechanized, and they can take things over. And they're just waiting for that. They're just waiting for that. And they're not good guys. These are not good people that are waiting to come in and, split them out of olives and bind Satan for 1,000 years. That ain't happening. That's not happening. So I wrote back to this person and said, yes, we do need a revolution, but the revolution needs to take place inside the bounds of the Constitution. And the way we do that as a republic is we do it through elections. We do it by voting. And, of course, the issue is that you and I, we have lost confidence in our election system. 12 million more of us went to the ballots in November of 2020, and these magic ballots were stuffed by more than 50,000 mules around the country. 30 million votes went in, and all of a sudden, boom, they win. Well, the Constitution doesn't do a very good job, it does no job at all at dealing with cheaters. It doesn't have a mechanism for it. It doesn't say, well, if the election takes place and, now you have 22 months to certify the election. Certification is a regimented procedure, a standard operating procedure in the Constitution. And we tried to follow it. We really did. 1 million of us went to D.C. We stood behind Mike Pence, and we said, you need to have courage because we are out here supporting you. And when Arizona comes to you and says, I don't know, we have a lot of evidence of massive amounts of fraud, and I don't think we can actually certify our election at this time. We need to get to the bottom of this, and we need some time. Well, that's what they did. They came to that joint meeting, and when it came to Arizona, let's start in alphabetical order, I suppose. Arizona said, well, I got to tell you, Mr. Vice President, you're in charge of this joint committee between the Congress and the Senate, and we're certifying our elections. We're declaring our delegates for the winner of the election in our state, but we got some problems. There were laws broken. There was a lot of fraud going on here. We need to get to the bottom of it. And so Mike Pence said, has your statement been signed by a congressman? They said, well, yes, it has, as a matter of fact. And then he said, has it been signed by a senator? And they said, well, yes, it has. As a matter of fact, Ted Cruz signed it. So he said, okay, well, since those two conditions have met, we are now going to adjourn this meeting, and you all can go back to your congressional chambers, because this is the joint session, and you can work it out. You can work it out and come back when you're ready. That was exactly what Mike Pence was supposed to do. He did it, word for word, right out of the Constitution. It was perfect. But you see, a few minutes before this took place, Nancy Pelosi laid her gavel down and she left the podium. She knew what was going to happen. She orchestrated what was going to happen. On her orders, the police threw the doors open and invited people into Congress. And as soon as they came in, somebody shouted, "We're under attack, run for your lives," something to that effect. And of course, the panic set in. They grabbed up the delegates' votes and hightailed it into the safe room, where they stayed in a panic. And of course, they fed the panic, probably. But then, when they came back, Arizona's debate was all forgotten about. All that, hey, we had a lot of fraud in our state, and we're going to take a good, strong look at it. And then Minnesota, and then Wisconsin, and then Georgia, and then Pennsylvania, also thinking the same thing. Maybe we better not say anything, this insurrection, they stormed the Congress, and then Nancy Pelosi took the narrative back, and now you have the J6 Commission, and you have 314 people in a 19th century dungeon. It isn't that easy, you understand, this election thing. It's not that easy, even if you follow the constitutional procedures. But what made all that possible, Earth Explorers, was the ballots are us. If it wasn't for the entry points of the Zucker boxes to stuff those ballots and get them in the system, they couldn't have cheated. They couldn't have won it. So what we need to do as American citizens, because you got to realize those Zucker boxes, they weren't bought and paid for by anybody. They weren't paid for by taxpayer monies. They don't belong to the county. They don't belong to the election commission. They were donated. They're donated Zucker boxes. What we need to do is we need to destroy all of those boxes. We need to get our tow trucks, put a hook around them, pick them up, and haul them to the scrapyard. Every single one of them. All those Zucker boxes need to disappear. We need to encourage voting, absolutely. We want you to vote. Come down, vote in person with ID. That's it. Once. You vote once in person with ID. Those are the guidelines. And if you can't get down here to vote because you're in a nursing home or because you're sick or you're agoraphobic or whatever, we will provide a way for you to vote. But you're going to vote once, and you're going to vote your ballot. Nobody else is going to handle your ballot except you. Yeah, that's the way it's got to go. Once we do this, we secure the election, and then the Democrats will lose 80 to 90, maybe 100 seats in Congress, and it's going to be worse statewide. In the next 90 days, now it's just June 1st today, but in the next 90 days, okay, it'll be July 1st, and then it'll be August 1st, and then it'll be September 1st. That's 90 days. 90 days from now, the election begins. Okay? Labor Day weekend is when the election begins. That's when it's full on. That's when it's game on. Those Zucker boxes have got to be gone before the end of June. They have to be at the scrapyard by the end of June. And they can't be salvaged. That means we need to take a cutter to them and cut them in half or weld them shut. No ballots are going to be turned into a drop box anymore. Those ballots are going to be brought to the precinct by election night, and that's it. If it doesn't arrive by 10 p.m., it doesn't count. It should be 8 p.m. when the polls close. If all the ballots have not been turned in by 8 p.m., that's it. They don't count. You know the rules. That's the rules. Make that happen. We'll win the election. And the republic will be recovered. Do we have to have a revolution? Yes, we do. But as I said, revolutions are rarely finished by the people who start them. So don't let it get out of hand. Make this a revolution against the Zucker boxes. Pick them up. Pick up the boxes. It can be done. We need to get them off the sidewalk, get them out of the parks, get them out of the ghettos, and get them out of the areas of people of color, and we need to get those boxes removed. Those people can vote. Everybody can vote. Everybody can vote. No one's going to be kept from voting. But no more drop boxes. All right, that's how we win. That's how we keep the republic. No, I don't think they'll do anything to you because that's not county property. It's not government property. It doesn't belong to anybody. It belongs to Zuckerberg. So what? So what? I would make sure that nobody can put ballots in it. Go up with a stick welder on the back of a truck and weld the door shut if you have to. Put a spider web around it. Get Spider-Man to put a spider web around it. No votes in the drop boxes. And then everybody votes. I like that idea a little bit, Lori. Everyone needs a code to vote. Now we kind of have that, though, right? Woo. Got your fingerprint, you got your license, that's your code. That's your code to vote. But if you take every registered voter in America, all of them, and you take the 74 million that voted for Trump, you're missing 30 million votes. There's no way Biden could have got 81 million votes because there aren't that many. There's only 130 million registered voters in the United States, maybe 134 million. If Trump took 74 million, that leaves Biden about 20-something million short of winning. Trump won it all. He won it all. And Biden lost. So that's why it is the way that it is. All right. I want to talk a little bit about the atmosphere. Every time we breathe in, we breathe the atmosphere made mostly of nitrogen with a generous helping of oxygen and a dash of carbon dioxide. That's the way it is. But dusting the atmospheric soup with a whole encyclopedia of different compounds and elements, none of which we can only speculate about. One of those mysteries just came into focus. Chemists have shown that a reactive class of compounds called organic hydrotrioxides exists in our atmosphere. And while these chemicals only last briefly, they can have effects that we don't know about yet. In fact, by researchers' calculations, if you sucked up a few billion molecules of them while reading this or listening to my program tonight, exactly what this means for your health, not to mention the health of our planet, is literally and figuratively up in the air. But given that, we've just discovered this new ingredient in Earth's atmosphere, and that's what I want to talk to you about. So these compounds, I mean, they've always been around. We just don't know about them. But the fact that we now have evidence that the compounds are formed and live for a certain amount of time means that it's possible to study their effect and respond if they turn out to be dangerous. Now, as is usually the case in chemistry, which I have a degree in chemistry, but not with great strength in organic chemistry, mostly in nuclear chemistry. The addition of just a single new component can radically change how a material behaves. Take water, for example. You can add salt to water and you can change its boiling point, its freezing point, its taste, what kind of life forms can live in it, right? Just ordinary sodium chloride. But thanks to the way its pair of hydrogens and single oxygen interact, organic chemistry can mix and swirl into an evolving phenomenon that we call life, right? Living things. And we just add more oxygen and we get what's called hydrogen peroxide, right? And that will kill all gram-positive bacteria. That's what causes the foam when it releases that extra oxygen, reacts with gram-positive bacteria and kills it. Gram-positive's typically more virulent than gram-negative bacteria, and so we kind of like to kill them off if we can. But in the single oxygen, they interact. Organic chemistry can mix and swirl in a variety of ways. And, of course, hydrogen peroxide is way more reactive than just water. And it can actually tear a lot of chemistry apart because the extra oxygen is how it oxidizes things. So stick one more oxygen on this, and the result is hydrotrioxide. To make it, you just need the right kind of lab equipment, some saturated organic compounds, and, of course, some dry ice. It's not exactly the kind of party trick that you'd use to spice up a margarita, but chemists have used their manufacture in the generation of a specific flavor of molecular oxygen as a step in producing various other substances. Being completely reactive, there's been an open question as to whether hydrotrioxides can easily form stable structures in the atmosphere. It's not just an academic point of speculation. So much of the way our atmosphere operates, from the intricate ways it influences personal health to the massive scale of global climate, emerges from the way trace materials in it interact. Most human activity leads to emission of chemical substances into the atmosphere, obviously. So knowledge of the reactions that determine atmospheric chemistry is important if we are able to predict how our actions will affect the atmosphere in the future. We don't want to pour extra chemicals in because we watch these react at high altitude, especially in the presence of intense ultraviolet radiation or cosmic rays from the sun. And we can watch the quality of our atmosphere change. Does it change the climate? Not so much, but it does affect health in a variety of ways. All right. And we have aerosols, too, which we get from volcanoes. And right now, I think there are 8 or 9 active volcanoes on the planet of any size. We've never had them all blow up at one time, but we've also not had this level of earthquake activity ever in the history of the world. There's a lot going on geophysically on our planet. And speaking of geophysics, of massive seismic events, House GOP conference chair Elise Stefanik, she's the Republican from New York, and Representative Mark Wayne Mullen, he's a Republican from Oklahoma, and nearly 30 other Republican leaders have introduced a resolution to expunge the contents of President Donald Trump's impeachment, the second one from the record. That's the one that actually went to impeachment trial in the Senate. The week's move might portend the House Republicans' agenda beginning next January. Why do I say that? Because we're going to sweep the House. And that means all the Democrats are going to lose their committee seats, their committee chairs, U.S. attorneys, blah, 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 blah. It's just going to be a bloodbath for the Democrats. And if they repeal Roe v. Wade, that takes $50 million a year out of their budget. The Democrat Party could very well go bankrupt as far as they're extended. So in the meantime, the Democrat-controlled House is not going to pass Stefanik-Mullen's resolution, but it will make its way, and it'll get amended, and some things may happen, and it'll be ready by January when the new Congress is sworn in. This week's measure also represents a firm show of support for President Donald Trump, and he expressed gratitude toward the GOP House leaders today by saying thank you, Elise and Mark Wayne. Democrats used their second impeachment resolution to once again weaponize one of the most grave and consequential powers of the House. This was never about the U.S. Constitution. It was rooted in personal politics. Of course, we know why it happened, right? The first impeachment was about the phone call to Zelensky. The second one was about, well, it was a reaction to al-Baghdadi being found and killed. What had happened is Pelosi and Schiff had flown to Jordan to meet with the King of Jordan. They wanted the King of Jordan to call the president down, make him stop withdrawing troops from Syria, because those troops were keeping Turks at bay And the Turks were not able to let the refugees go back to Syria, which is what they wanted to do. And American troops were in the way, and everybody knew that if you harm a head on an American troop, it's gonna be hell to pay, and it would be severe hell like nothing they had ever seen before. So President Trump decided to move the troops down a little bit beyond the Taco Bell, still in country but out of harm's way. And when they did that, they exposed al-Baghdadi's operation to Turkish forces. And that was Panic City, because this is how all that money has been handled over there. Al-Baghdadi and ISIS and all that. We're talking billions and billions of dollars, and all the rockets, missiles, and grenades and intel and everything. See, they kept records on all that because that's how they keep themselves safe. They cover their butts by saying, no, don't betray me, or I'll let all this information out to the press. You see, all this money you've been laundering, all these drugs we've been selling, that's how we hype up our ISIS fighters and Al-Qaeda fighters, and we make them so fierce. We make them fierce because we drug them up. It's like a speed like nothing you ever saw before. It's something that ISIS used to get hopped up on before they would go into a town, and they were unstoppable. It was like PCP to these guys. Well, al-Baghdadi was the big drug dealer. He was the guy that distributed all this stuff, and it mainly went out of Syria. And who was involved in that? Well, it was Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff. They built ISIS. That was their army. That's what they put together. So moving the American troops out of the way exposed al-Baghdadi. So they flew over there, got a courier, and said, listen, you need to get this message to al-Baghdadi. This is all going down. We got to get rid of these records, and we'll take care of him, and, all this money and blah, blah, blah. So the courier took off. Well, the courier got caught. The courier got caught by special forces, and they made him talk. I don't know how they made him talk, but they made him talk, and he gave up al-Baghdadi's location. All this is unbeknownst to Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff, who are over there trying to, cover a base. This is on I believe it was on a Friday night. It was on a Friday night. And President Trump pulled the trigger and said, okay, we'll get the approval from the countries we have to fly over in the middle of the night. Let's get over there to where al-Baghdadi is located. We can finally catch him, and let's dispatch of him. Well, he had 14 human shield kids, and he had a woman who was loaded with a vest, and she had these kids, explosive vests, and had these kids close to her, and that was how they were going to protect themselves. Special forces went in and instantly, boom, put a bullet right in her forehead. She didn't have a chance to push the button. Al-Baghdadi panicked, ran down the wrong tunnel. It was kind of a dead end, went to someplace, but not the escape hole that he thought. And close in tow was the dog. Al-Baghdadi hates dogs. I mean, really hates them. Doesn't want to get bit, doesn't want to get killed by a dog. So he gets run down to the end of this tunnel, and he decides to yell a bunch of obscenities and blow himself up, which he did. It didn't kill the dog. No, it maybe hurt his hearing a little bit, but it didn't hurt the dog. That was Friday night. President Trump came out, made a special announcement. Hey, we got al-Baghdadi, and I have more in the morning. I'll tell you some more in the morning. Saturday morning, like 9 o'clock in the morning, everybody gets up, and President Donald Trump gets back on TV and says, yes, it's true. We confirmed it. We got al-Baghdadi. We saved all the kids. None of the kids were hurt. But here's the really good news. The really good news is we got a ton of intel out of this place. This was like the headquarters where al-Baghdadi operated. And he had files and computers and hard copies and receipts. And that's how he stayed alive. That's how he covered his butt, is he had all the stuff on all the politicians that built up ISIS and made it big. and made it have weapons and made it have intel and made it so fearsome and did all the TV productions and everything for him. He had all that information. Now Trump had all that information. And he made that announcement on Saturday. And the people were like, yeah, well, I can't believe it. Monday is when Nancy Pelosi returned and started the impeachment procedures. That's where the second impeachment came from. That's why he got impeached, because he had the information on them. And so that's why they're going to expunge it from the record. Expunging means it never existed, like it never happened. Let's see. I have a little bit of information on hacker wars. If you've been watching some of the monitors, you could see the hacking going back and forth live, between the United States and Ukraine and Europe and the United States. It's quite active. But what you probably don't know is that the hackers working for the U.S. military have run offensive campaigns in support of Ukraine, attacking America. Yes, it's true. General Paul Nakasone, I want to say Nakatomi Tower too. I wanted to say that. But anyway, Paul Nakasone is the head of U.S. Cyber Command. And he told the news outlet that separate hunt-forward operations were being used to identify foreign hackers and their weapons before they could be used against the United States. According to FedScoop, hunt-forward operations involve physically deploying defensive cyber protection teams from the Cyber National Mission Force to foreign nations like Ukraine, putting them in Ukraine, right? To hunt for threats on their networks at their invitation. Now, starting with intelligence found with the host nation is a critical part of how hunt-forward operations work. That's what Nakasone said. If you're an adversary and you've just spent a lot of money on a tool, let's say, and you're hoping to utilize it to, readily in a number of different intrusions, suddenly it's outed. And it's now been signatured across a broad range of networks, and suddenly you've lost your ability to do that. Now, the general confirmed that the U.S. cyber specialists had been in Ukraine very close to the start of the Russian invasion of the former Soviet country. We went to December in 2021 at the invitation of the Kiev government, that would be the Zelenskyites, to come and hunt with them. We stayed there for a period of almost 90 days. Now, you have to understand what's going on here, because this cyber battle is important. Putin has a policy in his own military that he does not accept people to serve in the military who are over 40 years of age. Now, 40 is kind of young. And, a lot of the cyber experts that I know in the cybersecurity business, they're over 40. They're over 40. They're not like 18, 19, 20-year-old kids like you would think. There's a lot to this because it's not just a matter of being a gamer. It's not just a matter of, knowing how to, negotiate open source software. It's also about experience. And the experienced guys have been around, since the 80s, since the 90s, since 95. These young kids, they haven't been doing it that long. They don't have the experience. They haven't seen it. They can look it up, of course. You can go searching for it. But these guys know it because they were involved when the first viruses, started happening. So Putin changed his policy. He changed his policy, allowing cyber security experts over the age of 40 to serve. Now, one of the things that the DPR is the Donbass defenders, the republic that makes up the Ukrainians of Russian descent in Donbass, the DPR, the Donbass People's Republic. Their spies are everywhere because they know the area inside and out. And one of the things that they were really worried about is that the Azovs had wired at least one chemical refinery to blow it up. And the explosives were all radio controlled, so they could be blown up from a distance. They didn't have like a fuse going across the street, to the 7-Eleven. They were going to blow them up by radio. So the DPR knows this, and so they go in the area and they jam the radio signals. They jammed the radio signals so the explosives could not be blown up, and the DPR could go in and find these elaborate explosives, some of them under rail cars with ethylene oxide in them, and just terrible, terrible stuff. If that refinery had been blown up, and this was a very real concern. I was talking with Russell Bentley in, I think it was early February. It was before the Z offensive, and we had already knew of the planned invasion of Crimea by the Azov Battalion. And of course, if we knew it, I can guarantee you that Putin knew it because he has better spies than we do. The worry was that they were going to blow up this chemical plant and that they were going to use radio-controlled detonators to do it. So the DPR blocks them. Now, one of the things that confused Americans who were in there advising the Azov Battalion is why the Russians did not deploy very sophisticated cyber warfare vehicles, these ground vehicles. We have airplanes, yes. We have aircraft and helicopters and drones even that can do stuff. But the ground-based ones are very sophisticated, very powerful. They can go into an area, they can block cell phones, they can monitor cell phones, they can break into TV stations, they can do all kinds of stuff. The reason the Russians didn't send this cyber equipment in, first of all, they knew the DPR had these radio signals jammed. But second, of course, Jake Sullivan had already announced to the world that he suspected Vladimir Putin was going to plant a false flag, right? That he was going to blow up something and blame it on somebody else. Well, this is projection of the worst kind, because they had planned on blowing up the chemical factory and saying, just like they've been saying all along, that Putin blew it up. Putin blew this up, and it would have created a horrible humanitarian crisis, not just there, but the chemicals floating up in the atmosphere around the planet. It would have affected everybody. It would have affected everybody on the planet. It would have killed dolphins in Hawaii. This is a horrible event would have been. The DPR blocked it, and the Russians stayed out of the way. So the Russian vehicles could not be blamed if anything did happen. It was very high level skullduggery going on here. And Nakasone knows that this is going on. That's why our American hackers were over there contracting, wanted to make sure this didn't happen. And this is what we discovered. So while he didn't provide further details on the operation's activities, Nakasone did say they were lawful, conducted through policy determined by the Defense Department and with civilian oversight. He said, my job is to provide a series of options to the Secretary of Defense and the President, and so that's what I do. Nakasone did say, however, that the U.S. seeks to strategically tell the truth. That means when it's convenient and it doesn't implicate them. Strategically tell the truth when conducting an information operation, unlike Russia, which reportedly begins such operations with a lie. Whatever. All I know is that the chemical plant didn't blow up, and they were able to find and demilitarize all of the explosives. The explosion was averted. It never happened, and the chemical plant is now safe. That's the truth. And, of course, you hear mention of Russia fighting a proxy war against NATO. That is actually not what's happening. It is a proxy war. It is a proxy war. But it is not a proxy war by Putin. Putin is actually trying to stop the invasion of Crimea, which he did, dead in its tracks. Donbass is now free. I believe that part of the negotiations for the month of June are going to be, and you're going to hear this word more and more in maybe not the fake stream news, but you can hear it more and more in our community of the mainstream news. The real news is a word called federation. You're going to hear the word more and more, especially maybe not this week, but the following week. You're going to hear the word federation when referring to Ukraine. And it's going to be a point of negotiation, a negotiated settlement. They don't want the Donbass to be annexed to Russia. That is something they want to avoid. I think Putin wants to avoid that too. But I think a good middle ground would be forming a federation. What is a federation? A federation is similar to what we have here in this country, or what we had prior to the Civil War, where we had states who were sovereign countries in and of themselves that cooperated in a single body, which we call a republic, and we shared the same currency and the same language and, the same army, and these are the kinds of things that made the republic possible. Of course, then they went bankrupt and the corporation took over, and that's a whole nother program. The point that I'm trying to make here very carefully is that Zelensky and that whole group, they've lost. The war is over. And so what Olga is trying to say with the Russian news service is that World War III has effectively begun. It has effectively begun. In other words, the battle that was once for the Donbass in Ukraine, that's over. That part is finished. The Russians won. The Azov battalion was defeated, and they are no longer in power. So now what has happened is that the Biden administration, I just call them Virtual Joe and their gang of criminals, and the Pan-European Army, which used to be known as NATO, but it really isn't the North American Treaty Organization anymore. It is, for all intents and purposes, a proxy war against the American people. And it's being conducted by our own president. So anyway, this Russian state television presenter, her name is Olga Skabayeva. She said it's time to acknowledge that maybe Russia's special operation in Ukraine has come to an end and World War III has begun. The campaign to protect the people in Donbass from a Nazi regime, that's over. That's finished. The Russians won. It's done. They've accomplished it. But they can't declare victory yet, according to her, because the Russians are not going to be able to achieve victory unless they fight the whole military alliance, which is NATO and whatever the United States is feeding them. So she says, I have some unpleasant news. Although we are methodically destroying the weapons that are being delivered to Ukraine, the quantities in which the United States are sending them force us to come up with some global conclusions. And that means that they are actually fighting against America, which they never really wanted to do, and we have no business being there, doing that. She said perhaps it's time to acknowledge that maybe Russia's special operation in Ukraine has come to an end in a sense that a real war had started, World War III. According to Al-Bawaba, some online commentators suggested that Skabayeva's comments were made to justify the Kremlin's failure to achieve the invasion's stated goals. But I'm here to tell you that the invasion's stated goals have been reached, and well beyond. Donbass is now denazified. So I believe they're at a point now where you're going to begin to hear this word federation. And I think that they're going to pressure Zelensky, at least the Azov battalion, to negotiate for a federation. Let Donbass be a state and represent itself in the Ukrainian Federation. Russian Security Council Secretary Nikolai Patrushev, a key ally of Putin, said during a press conference that he believes Poland plans to annex parts of Western Ukraine, according to Russian news agency Interfax. And that's quite possible. It is quite possible. I don't think it's probable. And the reason I don't think it's probable is because the portion of Ukraine that they are interested in annexing are all ethnic Russians. Poles traditionally don't get along very well with Russians. However, that being said, they get along even worse with Nazis. They don't like them, and maybe they will take peaceful Russian people in exchange for warlike Nazi people. I'm just saying. There's a lot going on, and we could cover so much more, but I want you to be aware that I believe this federation will be a negotiated settlement out of this. And if the U.S. keeps sending missiles, rockets, grenades, launchers, whatever, they're just going to be destroyed. I don't think they'll ever be deployed in wartime in Ukraine. They'll be sold. 1,400 Stinger missiles didn't get shot. Maybe 100 got shot. But the other 1,300, they got sold. Those people are hungry. I mean, they're selling them for money. Those things are worth about $180,000 a copy. So it's just happening. The bad news is that we are selling all of our Stingers, and now we can't defend ourselves. We can't shoot down a biplane. We can't shoot down a biplane because we gave away all of our Stinger missiles. And guess when we get new ones? 2024, just in time for the re-election of President Donald Trump. It seems I don't even have a word for it. I don't have a word for how bad this is, how bad Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals have weakened our country, militarily, economically, politically, socially, even morally, bankrupted our country in such a short amount of time. We cannot last another 2 years. This has to happen. In the next 90 days, the 2022 election begins. 90 days. We've got to get rid of the Zucker boxes, and we've got to secure our elections so the American people can have this revolution at the ballot box where it belongs. All right? Let's make this happen. This is America Free Radio. My name is Brooks Agnew. We've been live for the last couple of hours. Thank you so much for being part of the program. And by the way, book sales have gone through the absolute freaking roof this month. I'm not really sure why, but Birth Trilogy and Charm of Favor have sold hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of copies, and I couldn't be more pleased. But please, go out and look for the good in others and help it to grow a little bit every day, and before long, you will have saved the planet. Peace, Earth Explorers.
Listening to Revolution